What's up everybody, welcome back. In today's video we're gonna continue what we were doing in the last video, and that's making some fixes and improvements to some stuff in the game. So I mainly have a couple of smaller HUD issues left, and then we were supposed to have a look at the spectating, but at the last minute I encountered a problem with that. So I have to look into it. I'm not sure if I can fix it or I have to come up with a completely different way to do it. But for now, we have to delay the spectating part. So instead, I'm gonna do some fixes and improvements for the Lyra Game FX as well in this video. So it kind of depends on if you followed that mini series or not. So I did a little series on the side a while ago where you can set up the Lyra Impact FX, shell ejects, muzzle flash, and also weapon sounds and things like that. So we can make a few improvements to that regarding to the multicasts we're doing in there, and also make sure that the damage numbers that we're using actually show the correct damage. So that's what we're gonna do as well. If you haven't followed the project, you can still follow it at this point as well. So I just added it after doing episode 460 or 61 or something like that, and it worked fine. So there's no issues with that. And one improvement they made, so in Unreal Engine 5.1, if you migrate all of the FX and stuff, you don't need to fix any errors and miserable things you needed to do in 5.0. So all of the fixing errors and stuff, you can pretty much skip the first video and then start with the second one. So that's a big improvement they made. So let's start with the widget stuff, and we're gonna do some stuff to the lobby. So for example, if I have a game mode selected over here and I go into my character selection menu, for example, and then go back, the game mode resets. So we're gonna make sure that this stays where you put it. And then we also have a problem with the options button because it's not being disabled for some of the game modes that don't have any options. So for example, Endless Wave doesn't have any options, and if I click it, I'm stuck in this menu, so we need to fix that as well. And then we have a few smaller things that are also HUD related, so let's just start working on those. So let's get rid of this. So first of all, I want to take a look at the damage direction indicators. So let's open up the hero base character and go to the get damage direction function. So in here I'm subtracting two vectors, and that doesn't always work depending on where in the level you are and the grid coordinates that you are using. So a better way to do it would be to drag off the attacker location, and we're going to use a unit direction vector and then plug in the actor location of your own character into the 2-pin, and then plug this one back into the make rotator from Z. So this will fix the damage indicators, so we can compile and save it. And then we have to do the same thing inside of our widgets in-game HUD. So in here we also have a calculate damage direction function, and I already have it in place over here, but this used to be a minus node as well. So just replace the subtract node with the unit direction vector, plug in your own pawn into 2-pin and the attacker location in the from pin, and then that should work. So those will fix the damage indicators. Then let's take a look at the stuff in the lobby I just mentioned. So we can open the lobby menu, where it is, over here. And first of all, let's take a look at the game mode resetting. So if we simply go to the event graph and we go to our event construct, then a little bit further down the road, we have the solo game branch, and after that, the branch for the server. And the server sets the selected game mode over here to index 0. And we can simply grab our game mode index from the variables and plug it in over here. And that will actually fix the problem. So if we remove the widget from the viewport, we still have it stored as a variable on our character. So the actual widget will not be destroyed, it will still be in the memory. And if we add it to the viewport again, event construct will run because it's constructing the widget again, but all of the variables will still be set from the previous time it was actually constructed. So the game mode index will still be the same, even though we removed the widget from the viewport and added it again later. So that's because it was stored as a variable on our character, and that prevents the garbage collection from actually deleting the entire widget. So as long as we have a reference to the widget, this will work. So we can simply plug this in here, and that should fix the issue. And then we also want to go into the update game mode options. So that's the function over here. And this is to fix the game mode options button not being disabled. So we actually have a correct setup for it over here with the switch on game modes and then enabling the button or not. But I forgot to remove the set enabled button over here after the row found pin. So if you have the same problem, just check if this is still here and remove it. Thank you. And then just plug this one back into the for each loop, and that will fix the game mode button. So compile and save the lobby menu. And so we're done in the widget, so we can close this one as well. Then we also have an issue if we play a standalone game and the game is over. The GameOver widget will be presented on the screen, and then if we travel back to the lobby, the GameOver widget doesn't get removed from the screen, so it will overlay the widget, the lobby, sorry. So we can fix that one as well, and that's pretty simple. So we can go to the framework folder and open our menu controller. Let's go to the event graph in here. I'm already at the event graph. So we have an event in here that creates the lobby menu. So that should be up here somewhere, create lobby menu. And we can simply disconnect this one and add a remove all widgets right before here. So remove all widgets. And after we removed all of the widgets, we're going to create the lobby menu. So that should fix the issue as well. Compile and save it. And then the last thing I have is the PlayerDied menu. That setup is also not working. So let me go to my shooter player controller. And let me quickly open up the UI show PlayerDied menu. So at the beginning, we don't have any actual checks on what game mode we are playing, because when we added this, we practically only had the survival, or the endless wave game mode. And we need to make sure that we pretty much only show this for the endless wave game mode. So what we're gonna do, first we're gonna go to the event graph, and we're gonna take a look at the server is respawn enabled event. So in here we're setting not only the respawn enabled boolean, but also a few other ones, and we have these ones for free-for-all and team deathmatch. And ideally we also want to know if we are playing endless wave or survival. So instead of adding more booleans, I'm just going to store the game mode enumeration on our player controller and get rid of the booleans. So what we're going to do, we're going to drag off the game mode over here and promote it to a variable. That's our current game mode. And we do want to make sure that we set it to replicate over here. And then we can simply get rid of all of these setters. So ismode free for all and ismode TDM. And then we're going to plug in all of the branches over here. So for now, let's just plug in survival as well. We're not actually doing anything with this game mode yet, but just make sure it's set up. So we have the current game mode stored in this enum right now, and we want to go to our hero base character. So characters hero base, and if we take a look at our begin play event, so pretty much at the end, we're getting the booleans from the player controller, ismode TDM and free for all, and we're storing them on the character. So at this point, I'm not going to bother with the enumeration on the character, but I do want to get rid of these nodes so we can delete the variables from the game mode. So from here, we're going to get the current game mode. And then we're going to add a switch over here. So switch on current game mode. So plug it into the switch first, and then let's disconnect these setters. So if we're playing free-for-all, we're gonna set this boolean to true. And if we are playing team deathmatch, we're gonna set this one to true. And then for team deathmatch, we also want to set our team ID. So we want to plug that one in as well. Let's just do it like this. There we go. And then for free-for-all and team deathmatch, we also have the respawn delay. So we need to make sure that we plug those in to the cast node. And for endless wave, we have respawn disabled. So we can skip the respawn delay and just plug it into the server ready pin. And survival, well, we have to see what we're going to do over here. But for now, let's just plug it in. Let's just plug it into the cast node so we can respawn if we would like to. So this will replace these two nodes. So we're going to get rid of those. If Unreal actually allows me to delete them. Okay, so I need to close the blueprint. And then reopen it. And now I should be able. Thank you. Okay, so those are gone, and now we can go back to our shooter player controller, and there shouldn't be any references left. So let's check. Free for all, none, and ismode TDM, also none. So we can get rid of these booleans. And now let's go into the UI show PlayerDied menu. And in here, we actually want to use our new enum. So let me quickly grab my notes in here. There we go. So after the branch, we're simply going to add a switch on the current game mode. So from the false bin, let's grab our current game mode. And let's add a switch. Plug it back into the false bin. So for endless wave, we want to plug it back to where we were used to go. So the first cat actors of all class. And for all the other three, we're simply gonna remove the HUD from the widget, from the viewport. So we can go to this last is valid check for the in-game HUD and simply plug those into the other three game modes. And that should make it work again. So we can compile and save that one. And we have the PlayerDied menu fixed as well. And those are pretty much all of the fixes I had left for the quote-unquote normal multiplayer project. So now we're going to take a look at the Lyra FX stuff. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at the Lyra FX. And first of all, I want to take a look at the damage numbers. So right now, it doesn't really matter what gun we are using or where we are shooting the enemy. It will just spawn a random number between 8 and 12, I think I have it set up. So that was just for demonstration purpose. And right now, we're going to make sure that it actually spawns the correct number. And if I get a headshot, it will make the number go red. So let's have a look at setting that up. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that you actually have the correct physics material assigned to your AI. So if you just followed the Lyra FX tutorial, you should have it set up correctly. But if not, you can make sure by going to the character mesh and then going to the material. And this is actually a material instance, so you can go and set it in here, but then it will only apply to this material instance. And you can also go to the parent material, and this is also an instance, so we're going to go to the parent material of this instance and just keep going till we are at the actual parent, and that's this one. And if we simply assign the physics material in here, this will apply to all of the parent materials as well, unless we override it in the material instance. So make sure you have the correct physics material set up over here to make sure the FX actually spawns. So that's the material. And now let's take a look at setting this up. So what I was going to do, we're going to go to our BP weapon impact blueprint in the weapons folder over here. And first of all, we're going to get rid of the damage stuff in here. So if we go to the body impacts, right now we're breaking the vector and then simply add a random integer for the damage and add that to the vector for. So we can get rid of this stuff. And for the for each loop, simply plug in the loop body with the spawn emitter at location. And if this is completed, we don't need to do anything in here. So we're simply going to get rid of all of the damage number stuff in here. So just delete the entire branch over here and only keep this stuff. And then for the variables, we can get rid of the damage info. So first of all, we need to remove it from the event graph, and then we can remove it from the variables over here as well. And we can also get rid of the Niagara system damage numbers. So we're not using that component anymore either. Get rid of the isValid node, and we can remove the pin over here. So now we can also get rid of the component in here, NS damage numbers, and delete that one. So we have most of it deleted from here. We can get rid of the last stuff at the end. First of all, let's set up the damage interface to make sure we actually pass on the location of our hit in the interface. So we're going to go to framework interfaces and then go to the BPI damage interface. And in here, we simply want to add it to the take damage event. So we want to add another input in here, and that's the damage location. And that's a vector. So compile and save the interface, get rid of this. And then if we go to our hero base character and take a look at the server process hit function, so over here, so we need to make sure we actually plug something into the damage location pin over here. So we can simply grab the location over here from the hit result. So this will pass it onto our interface, and then we want to go to our player interface. So we can get rid of the hero base character for a second. Go back to the interfaces folder, and we're going to use the damage player interface. So we're not actually damaging the player, but otherwise we have to create a new interface just for spawning the damage numbers, and that seems a bit unnecessary, so we can simply add it to this interface. So we're going to create a new function in here and call this spawn damage numbers. Oh really? There we go. And we're going to give this a few inputs. So the first one is going to be the location. That's a vector. The second one is the amount of damage, and that's a float. And then we want to add a boolean to tell us if this is a critical hit. So is critical hit. And we're going to turn this one into a boolean. And that should be good to go. So we can compile and save this interface and close it down. Then first of all, let's start in the minion base character. So let's go to our AI folder and open the minion base. So in here, let's take a look at the take damage. And that should be in here in the interfaces. So we have our new damage location over here, and we want to spawn the damage numbers. So what we're going to do, we're going to go a bit to the end over here. And right before we have the branch where we check if we are still alive or not, we're going to spawn the damage numbers. So we can actually just grab our character from the beginning over here. We are the attacker. So we can call this with the spawn damage numbers interface function, if I can still type. And then we can grab the damage location, plug it in here, and the amount, and plug it in here as well. No, that's not correct, by the way. Disconnect the amount. We're gonna only grab the location from the input, and then we're gonna go all the way to the end. So right before the branch, if we are still alive, as I mentioned. So I'm gonna get rid of the print and plug it in between here. And now for the amount, we want to plug in the local damage variable. So this is actually adjusted to the headshot damage. If we get a headshot, we multiply the damage. So this will display the correct damage. And we can plug in the local is headshot boolean to tell us if this is a quote-unquote critical hit or not. So that will make the FX number turn red. So this is good to go. We can compile and save it, and this will make sure we spawn a damage number if we shoot or damage the AI. So we can close the AI minion base, and then we want to go to our hero base character again. And in here, we need to take a look at the take PvP damage. So let's open up take PvP damage, because we also want to spawn the damage numbers if we are shooting other players in free-for-all or team deathmatch, for example. So let me grab my notes in here quickly. So we can just add it. I can get rid of this print. That was for something else. So we can just add it over here after the second branch, and we can simply grab it, our attacker again, and call our spawn damage numbers. So the interface message function, and make sure we plug it in right after the true pin over here. And then again, we can get the impact point as our location. So we can grab it from the hit result we're passing on. We're breaking it over here. And for the amount, that comes from the input of the event. So plug it in. And we don't actually use damage locations right now for the player. So I'm probably gonna set those up later. So we can then use the critical hit boolean for headshots, or if we get a kill, for example. For now, I'm just gonna leave it as false. So that will fix or not fix, but add the damage numbers for PvP damage. And then we also want to take a look at the event graph to make sure we actually have something hooked up to the spawn damage numbers. So let's go to the event graph, and we actually want to add our interface function. So let's go to interfaces and then double click the spawn damage numbers. So it will create the event. Now the damage events that we are using actually run on server. So the server will call this interface, and that means it will only run on the server. And we actually want to spawn the damage numbers for local players, because those are the only ones that need to see them, the player that actually shoots. And you don't want to see the damage numbers for other players, because then things get really confusing. So we want to make sure that we replicate this from the server to the owning client to make sure the correct instance of our character sees them. So we're going to create a custom event, and we're going to call this owner spawn damage number. So first of all, let's make sure we replicate it to the owning client. And then we're going to pass on the location, the amount, and the is critical hit boolean. So let's create those inputs. And then the first one is the location, so that's a vector. The second one was the amount, and that's a float. And the third one was the is critical hit. And that was the boolean, so that's good to go. Then from the event spawn damage numbers, we want to call this owner spawn damage numbers. So let's hook that one up first and just pass on the variables. And it didn't actually update over here, so that's going to be an error. There we go. Okay. That should be better. So for the owner spawn damage numbers, we're gonna spawn a system at location. So spawn system at location. And then for this one, for the system template, we're gonna plug in the Niagara system damage numbers. Then grab the location over here. We don't need a real rotation because they always face the player, so that's good to go. And we actually want to leave all of this stuff as it is as well. So auto destroy, auto activate, that's fine. And then we need to set up the actual damage number Niagara system. So drag off the result, and then we're gonna set a vector for array. So set vector for, and then use the array one. And then in here, for the name, we want to use user.damageInfo. So this is simply a variable that's created on the Niagara system by Epic, and Epic came up with that name. So damage info, user.damageInfo, that's what you want to put in there. And then for the array data, we're going to drag off and we're going to make an array. And then drag off the index over here, and we're gonna make a vector for. Then we can break the location over here. And those are the first 3 pins, so the X, Y, and Z. And the damage amount goes into the W pin, so plug that one in over here. And then all we need to set is the critical hit. So again, we need to drag off the return value, and this time we're gonna set a Niagara variable as a boolean. So set Niagara variable, and then the boolean. So this one, make sure you have the target hooked up, and then for the in variable name, this is one that I created in the tutorial. So this is user.criticalHit, user.criticalHit, and then for the in value, just grab it from the event and plug it in over here, and that will make sure the FX turns red if we get a critical hit. So we can compile and save that one. And then that should be good to go. So we can actually go back to our weapons and then weapon impacts. And in here we still have the owning player pin hooked up, and we don't need that one anymore. So it's not over here. This is instance editable and exposed on spawn. So we do need to make sure that if we delete it, we go back to our hero base character. That's what I forgot. So let's just delete it over here. That shouldn't be an issue. There we go. And then compile and save it. And then, I'm sorry, we need to go back to the hero base character. That's my bad. And in here for the server weapon fired. And that's actually a function and not an event. So let me just look for it. Weapon fired. Oh, is it an event or is it a function? It's actually a function, so it should have been in here. Oh, it's all the way at the bottom. So in here, we want to get rid of the owning player pin on the spawn actor BP weapon impacts. So disconnect it, get rid of the getter, and that should be good to go. So compile and save it, and now we should have working damage numbers. So let's have a look if this is working or not. So endless wave, that's good to go. And now this should actually display a different number, so that's 15. And if I get a headshot, it will give me a red 30, so that's good to go. And if I grab another weapon, it should display a different damage number. So this is 18 and 36, so that's working. And this should work in multiplayer as well, except for the headshot thing. So the critical hit, as I mentioned, we have no damage locations for multiplayer setup yet. Okay, so those were the damage numbers, and now I want to take a look at some improvements regarding the multicasts that we have in here and how we could get rid of them and replace them with rep notified. So first of all, let's have a look at the weapon impacts and the weapon decals. So if we open up one of these blueprints, so in here we are actually using a couple of arrays, and we do need all of those variables. So we're going to make a structure containing those variables, and that structure is going to be our rep notify variable. So as I showed in the episode with the network profiler, There is a slight improvement if you do it, but not a huge improvement. But on the other hand, if you consider this is a weapon fired function, and a weapon fires fast, so you can have easily like 10 shots a second, for example, and then also multiple players firing weapons at the same time. So even a small improvement in here could definitely still be an improvement. So that's why I think it's still worth doing it, although the improvement isn't huge. So that's what we're going to do. And to make that happen, we need a structure. So we're going to right click, go to blueprints and create a structure. This is going to be my s_weapon impact. And let's set it up. So we need the 4 arrays in here, and that's the impact positions. So let's add that one first. That's an array of vectors, so turn it into a vector array. Then we need a second vector array, and that's the impact normals. The third array are the impact surfaces, so impact surfaces, and those are the physical surface enumeration, so physical surface, this one. And the last one we need is a single vector, and that's our muzzle position. So muzzle position. There we go. And that's a single vector. So that's our weapon impacts array. Let's save it. And that should not array structure, and that's good to go. Now let's start with the weapon impacts blueprint, for example. We can grab this event and we're going to get rid of the inputs over here. And we're also going to set the replication to not replicated. So we're going to make it a normal event. And then we're going to grab a new variable over here, and that's our structure. So the s_weapon impacts or impact, and turn it into the s_weapon impact structure. So for the replication, we're going to set it to rep notify, and then let's grab it in here and break it. So we can hook it up back to our variables. So those will be populated. And then we're going to go into the onWrap weapon impacts. And from here, we're simply going to call our weapon fired function. So weapon fired. So that's the that's simply the start of the entire blueprint on the event graph. So if the variable changes, we're going to call this function, and it should have been updated, so everything should be good to go. So after we have this set up, we can do the same thing in the BP weapon decals. So let's close this one down, open weapon decals. And at the beginning, we have an exact same setup. So we're going to grab the weapon fired node. We're going to make this not replicated and get rid of the inputs over here. Then we're going to create the new s_weapon impact variable. And make sure that's the weapon impact structure. Oh, really? So we're going to set this one to rep notify again. Grab it in here and break it. Hook up the setters. And then we need to go to our onWrap weapon impact. And in here, we're simply going to call weapon fired. And that's good to go as well. Compile and save that one. So now we need to go into our characters hero base. And as you can see, there are some issues here because we removed a few pins. So if we go to the server weapon fired event, in here we call the weapon fired function. We don't want to do that. We're going to grab off the blueprint and we're going to set our s_weapon impact variable. So that's the rep notify one. And then we can simply drag off here and make a structure and plug in the variables like this. Surfaces, make sure you connect them up to the correct one. Hello. Oh, really? What am I doing? Impact normals, that's this one. There we go. So I messed up the order, but it's still connected correctly. So we can get rid of this and make sure that we simply plug in the setter for the rep notify one, and that will make the weapon fired function fire, or be called, how you want to call it. So do the same thing over here, drag off the weapon impacts and set the weapon impacts structure. Make a new structure, plug in the variables, so the normal, okay, the position, the normal, the impact and muzzle, and then replace the call with the setter for the rep notify, and that will work. So now the errors are gone, and that should fire the blueprints. So the next one we need to take a look at is the weapon FX one. So let's open the BP weapon FX. And this one only uses a vector array. So this is a bit simpler. We can simply make sure this vector array is a rep notify one. So let's disconnect it over here and get rid of the input. Make sure the event is not replicated anymore. And then we don't need the setter over here, by the way, because this is going to actually fire the onRep function. So make sure that we set the replication for the impact positions to rep notify. And then go to the onRep weapon impacts, and we're going to call our weapon fired like this. So we don't need the setter over here, we can delete it. And then if we go back to the hero base character, we need to fix the server weapon fired function again. So if we scroll up a bit, we have the call to weapon fired with the input, get rid of that one, and we're gonna set the impact positions array like this. So set impact positions. This is the set with notify, so this will make sure the weapon fired event will trigger. So move over the pins, get rid of this call, and that should fix it. So that's the weapon FX done as well. And the last thing left is the weapon sounds. So let's have a look at the weapon sounds. If we take a look at the server weapon fired function. So for the sounds we're calling weapon fired, and every time we're firing we're actually passing on the component, the fire time and the fire sound. And if you think about it, that's not really necessary because the weapon mesh is not going to change unless we change weapons. But if we change weapons, we're spawning a new blueprint anyway. The fire sound for a weapon is not going to change either, and we also don't have any options at this point to change the fire time of a weapon during gameplay. So it doesn't really make sense to keep passing on these variables. A better way to do it would be to expose these on spawn over here. So simply when we create this blueprint, tell what these variables are, and then we're going to use a boolean to boolean with rep notify to trigger the sounds actually playing. So let's go to the BP weapon sounds blueprint. So I already had it open. If you go to weapons, it should be in there. So BP weapon sounds. And for these ones, we're going to grab these variables and make sure that they are instance editable and exposed on spawn. So do it for all three of them. And then let me double check quickly. So we don't need them inside of the event anymore, obviously. So we can get rid of these inputs. And then also make sure the weapon fired event in here is not replicated. And get rid of the setters over here as well, by the way. So directly plug in the sequence, and that should be good to go. So now we need to go to our hero base character again. And we want to get rid of the inputs over here and move them to the spawn node over here. So we need to refresh the spawn actor BP weapon. And then over here, refresh nodes. So we can plug in the component, the fire time and the fire sound. And that should be good to go. And now we need a boolean over here to trigger the actual event. So we're going to go back to BP weapon sounds, and in here we're going to create a boolean and call this something like a fire trigger. And make sure that we set this to rep notify again. So on rep fire trigger, we're going to call our fire weapon event or weapon fired over here. And then we can go back to the hero base character, and instead of calling the event, we're going to drag off the blueprint and set the fire trigger. And then we're also going to get the fire trigger and make sure that we flip it around. So add a not boolean and make sure you plug it in. So you do actually need to make sure that the variable changes, otherwise the rep notify function will not fire for clients. So for example, if the boolean was true and I set it to true again, the rep notify function will only fire for the server and not for all of the clients. And the same thing goes with using a float, for example. So if I would have used the fire time float, that wouldn't work because the fire time is the same for each shot. So if I put it from point 1 to point 1, the rep notify function will not fire and the fire sound will not work. So you need to make sure if you use a rep notify that the variable actually changes, otherwise the function will not fire. So that's a little side note over there. So this should be good to go, and we should have all of that stuff quote unquote fixed or improved at least. So compile and save it, and then one last thing you could do is grab the weapon FX for the grenade from the Lyra project and also migrate it in here. And if you do that, then you can actually get rid of the military weapons pack if you would like to. So then you will only have the epic assets left from the Lyra game with the weapon meshes and the sounds and the FX from Lyra. So I'm gonna do that quickly because that's not really a whole lot of work. So I upgraded this game project to 5.1, so I made sure I also downloaded Lyra in the 5.1 version. And in here, we're going to grab the particles and the sounds for the grenade. So let's expand the audio section over here and then expand sounds. And we want to grab the explosions folder. And then we also want to go down to effects and then expand the particle section. And in here also grab explosion. So the two explosion folders, we're going to right click and then migrate them. So we're going to present it with this list of things to migrate. So we do want to migrate all of the audio stuff and the effect stuff. So this is simply good to go. Let's click OK. And make sure you migrate it to the correct project. So let me have a quick look over here. So we already have a bunch of those assets migrated if you're using the Lyra weapon FX and stuff, so you can simply say no to all and that should be good. Come on, you can do it. There we go. So you will get a few of these errors, mostly about soft references. These actually are files that are migrated if you check. So this shouldn't be an issue. You can just ignore this. So we can close the Lyra 5.1 game project and we should have our new stuff in here. So if we go to audio, we should have the explosions in here under sounds. And there should be the meta sound over here. And that's actually working without any errors. So that's good to go. And then for the effects under particles, we have explosions as well. So the grenade explosion, let's see if that's working as well. And it is actually compiling and working. So you do get a few of those warnings. And that's actually, let me see. So this is about a sprite. So I'm not sure about those. And you will also get a few for the rendering. So the fixed bounce one, because this is a GPU and it can't use dynamic apparently. So I haven't really looked into this. To me, it seems to be working pretty good, but you could set this to fixed. So I still need to have a look at this. I don't have much experience using Niagara systems and especially not creating them. So I'm not sure if this is a big issue or not, but for now the FX seems to work fine. So for now I'm gonna ignore it. So how do we actually apply this? If we go to our BP grenades blueprint, so weapons grenade and then BP grenade. So in here we need to replace the FX and the sounds. So let me grab my notes in here quickly as well. So we have the on projectile stop event. So that's this one, and in here we're spawning the emitters. So we want to spawn a system at location at this case. So we're gonna grab a new node in here, spawn system at location. And then this is the actual explosion. So we want to grab the Niagara system grenade explosion. Then we can simply grab the location and the rotation and move them over. Auto destroy, auto activate, that should be good to go. So for the play sound at location, you can grab the meta sound. So that's grenade. Oh. And it should be in here. There we have it. So it's all the way down. MSS explosions grenade. And that should be good to go as well. So it should be as simple as that. Compile and save it. Optionally, you can use the trial FX as well. So you can simply add it over here as a component. So if you add a Niagara system and assign the trial Niagara system from Lyra, that will work. But I think it looks a bit weird, so I'm not going to use it in my game. Then optionally, if you would like to remove the military weapon silver pack, you need to go into the hero base character. And in here we actually still have some stuff left from the previous setup that we're not using anymore. So this is only if you have the Lyra FX setup. Previously we used the onWrap bullet hit function that called the bullet FX, and that actually spawned the trial FX for the bullet and also the impact. And this was set in the server bullet trace function. So if we go to server bullet trace, previously we had the setter with the rep notify over here, and we actually don't use this anymore. So what we can do is actually completely delete the setter, and we can also get rid of the local hit results over here because we are we don't want to do that, by the way. So let's make sure that we actually have that stuff hooked up and only get rid of the setter for the notify. Then we can go to the rep notify event over here. So on rep bullet hit and simply delete that. Scroll down and go to the variable over here. So that's rep bullet hit over here, the structure that we created, and we should be able to delete it. So if we go to the event graph, we can get rid of the entire bullet FX event with the last setter for the variable, and then we can safely delete the variable as well. So rep bullet hit and get rid of that one as well. So that will clean up the last stuff from the old FX setup, again if you're using Lyra FX. And after you did that, you should be able to delete the military weapons pack if you would like to. So let's have a quick look if we actually removed all of the references. Because those are quite a lot of files. Oh, dang it. So I forgot one in the grenade. So the actual explosion FX for the grenade, I thought we replaced that. So let's double check it. And then we're going to test if this stuff is working. And then we are done for today. So I didn't actually remove the node. So that's why it still has the reference in here. So that's not really an issue. So if you get rid of that node, then you can delete the military weapons if you would like to. So let's have a look in game if everything is still working. We need a quick 2-player game, so I'm gonna set it up and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's make sure everything is still working. And I'm not getting any fire sounds, so that's definitely not working. The tracer FX is working, the impacts and the decals are working, so that's good to go. We have grenade FX, and we do have grenade sounds. And we also have the new Lyra FX, so that's good to go. That actually looks kind of nice with the decal, so that's a bit better. Let's see, so if we grab another weapon, that should actually work as well. So the shotgun impacts and stuff like that, that's working. And we actually do have sounds on the server side, so we might have forgot something replicating. Okay, so the only issue is the sounds not playing for the client, and we're also getting some errors over here. So I'm gonna take a look and I'll be right back. Okay, so there's actually two things I messed up. Let's open the BP weapon sounds. First of all, for the variable fire time and fire sound, we want to make sure that we set those to replicated. So the fire time and the sound should be replicated. And then the actual biggest issue at this point is the weapon mesh component. So we are attaching the fire sound to the weapon mesh component, and if we want to make this work with this setup, we also have to make that replicated, which we could do. That's not really a huge deal, but we can also fix it by simply grabbing the default scene root of this blueprint and attach the sound to that one. Then get rid of the weapon mesh component variable entirely. So we exposed this on spawn, that was my bad. We can get rid of it over here. And then if we go to the hero base character, we don't need that input anymore either. So hero base server weapon fired, and then over here where we spawn the blueprint, we don't need to pass on the weapon mesh anymore either. And the reason for that is because we are spawning the blueprint and we are attaching the blueprint to the weapon mesh already. So it doesn't really make sense to attach the sound to the weapon mesh as well. If we attach it to the default scene root of this blueprint, it's in the exact same location as the weapon mesh as well. And this actually saves us an input, and that saves us replicating a component as well. So that's a big plus. So now it should actually work. So we can have a quick look. Multiplayer host, and let's not worry about the profiles. We're gonna play with 2 blunts. And have a quick look over here. So now we should have working sounds for the client, and they are actually playing, so that's good. And if we pick up another weapon, we get another sound. So that's good to go. We have those set up and improved. So that's all I got for you today. Hope you liked the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like. If you want to get your hands on the project file, you can become a YouTube member or a Patreon, and then you will get access to premium channels in the Discord, and those will also give you access to the download for this project file. So with all of that stuff out of the way, again, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Later guys, bye bye.